it's all about marketing, like all things. Don't think just because there's a market for something, you're just going to sell it. You need to market yourself. And I got into it very, very luckily. As I mentioned, I didn't feel like I had the style. So I took Bepe and I said, every single day, I'm going to draw this character, Bepe, in the style of different artists I admire. One, for me to actually learn how to draw their style. And second of all, I want to give appreciation because they inspire me. And in doing so, I can't even believe it. I connected with people who I admire. We became friends. We've even met.
Wow.
And I kept on doing this. And I did 1 whole year doing this. A drawing a day.
Zach.
Hey, Pete.
Welcome to the Unbrandme Podcast.
Thanks for having me.
It's been a while. We've been talking about doing this now for a while.
Quite some time, yes.
So the Unbrandme Podcast started out because we were looking into trying to share the lives and the stories and the experiences, the highs, the lows of entrepreneurs, brand builders, and to understand what is it that makes somebody make great brands? What is it that makes somebody a great entrepreneur? And sharing that story with our listeners. At Brandwagon, we believe that better people make better brands, and better brands make a better world. And I've seen what you've been doing over the years, and it's just been a great honor and a pleasure to see how far you've come. Before we kick off, I just want to kind of share how we met, because I think this is interesting. So I'm not sure if it was 2014, 2016, more or less around sometime around that time. Brandwagon organized the Behance review.
I
don't know if you remember that. Yes, you do. Okay. So we organized this Behance review, which was something which we did for 2 reasons. Behance in those days was probably the biggest design portfolio site that existed, and every community was allowed to organize these Behance reviews.
And you had went to the conference, I remember.
That's right, 99U. And we basically invited people from the community to come and share their portfolios, and then people from within the industry could judge those portfolios and talk about. And in comes these two guys. You were with Mark, right? I believe Mark Bacon, was it?
I think so. I think so.
And you had basically pitched in for this project, and you had come in with your portfolio. And I remember everybody straight away saying, like, fuck, this Zach guy. Wow. His work is really phenomenal. And I remember there and then, Chris and I said, we need to give this guy a job. And I think at some point in time, Chris had actually offered you a job, but you had declined. Sad day, but a great day, I think. A great day, because if probably we hired you, you probably wouldn't be doing this today. So I'm glad to know that you're back and we're here to discuss where you've been and what you've been up to. So the question that I normally like to ask, people who are sitting down in a similar chair to you like this, is who do you say you are? And there's obviously, if you go up online, there's loads of stuff that say, what you do. But who is Zack Ritchie?
That's a really good question, yeah. I mean, I myself don't really know like what it is that I do, but I think I consider myself like a curious person that is interested in art, technology, and business to a certain extent as well.
And in fact, you've managed to pretty much marry all those 3 passions, quite well together now. So you started off as a graphic designer, where you've been drawing and illustrating since, time immemorial. So we'll go back to that and ask the question of how it all started. But you're most famous today, for creating your characters, the Cacti Crew, Bepe. You've actually created your monument. Yes. At Mercury Towers, and anybody who has the time should go and have a look, and whilst they're there should walk into your store now as well. So illustrator, artist, graphic designer, or ex-graphic designer in reality, I suppose, today, because you're not doing it commercially much, are you?
No.
But creative par excellence. So let's go back in time. How did it all start?
How back do you want to go, Pete?
Well, I think as what was the first memory of you picking up a pencil, a crayon, and start to illustrate?
I think ever since I was a kid, I used to always be obsessed with like collecting things, putting them in a box, and spending my free time like building stuff.
Okay.
I was a fan of Lego, Bionicas, and I feel like toys really, really helped me become creative. But whenever I used to go out to eat with like mom and dad, I used to always stay drawing on napkins. Always. And I used to leave it for like the waiter. But back then I used to be really, really shy. And it was my dad who like really like Told me like, listen, Zach, this is how you draw. You have to pay attention, observe things.
And your dad has had quite an influence on, he's one of your biggest fans and supporters. And he obviously brought you into this because you're saying he was teaching how to draw. So tell me a bit about this bond with your dad, and who is your dad? I mean, in terms, he's a creative himself, no?
Dad, it's true. Dad is a big inspiration. Both dad and mom.
Okay.
And they both have their sides, why I appreciate and admire them so much. Like, my mom has taught me empathy. She's taught me to care for others. She does a great job at that. And then my dad, on the other side, I just see him as like an amazing storyteller. He is the kind of person that can walk into a room and become friends with everyone. Like, even when I was shy, I still remember I used to tell him like, Dad, like, what's your secret? Like, I want to become like you. And he told me, he really knows how to give you small nuggets of advice. He's like, you want the secret? It's really simple. Don't overthink it. Just go and say hello. I told him, what do you mean? He told me, and then next time you meet them, you know them. Then the third time you meet them, you have another conversation. So that was always a great business person. Mm-hmm. Dad was a kind of person who...
And clearly a great communicator.
Very good communicator. A great storyteller, I would say. Mm. He'd get the people engaged, laughing, and everyone talks highly of him.
I met him once, and he was...
How was that experience?
It was great because, as you're saying, I didn't know him from Adam, and he immediately sort of, reached out and was the first person to introduce himself and just kind of welcome me into the conversation. Started discussing with me, and I was like, this guy's a really nice guy. When I spoke to Ket, our ego, who's a mutual friend, Ket said, make sure you ask Zach about his dad. So obviously your dad has left an impression on many people. He's also into art, himself.
He was actually an artist himself.
Okay.
But he started spanning more into business.
Okay.
And he even kind of went back into art. He's done so many things, like fixing mobile phones, doing tattoos.
Wow.
Selling property.
That's as permanent as art gets, right?
I mean, yes, but he's done so many different things.
Okay, so we've done the drawing in the restaurants. We've learned the empathy, and we're picking up the secrets on how to become good communicators. And you are an introvert. You've said that live on a podcast, no?
Yeah.
So your art helped you communicate, and get your message across. When did you really decide? When was the moment you said, like, this is it for me? So school wasn't a thing for you, right?
I still remember when I was in art school, I had originally transitioned from fine arts into graphic design because there was a point in my life that I felt like if I have to work with my hands, which I loved, stone, wood, and all these things, I didn't think I would have made a living. Maybe back then I was closed-minded to the opportunities. So I went into graphic design. And in doing so, I always say this because it really was a big perspective shift. Working with my hands made me realize, like, value can change. It's not just perceived in skill, time, material. It can be perceived in graphic design, communicating, in a brand, how it makes you feel. And that value change really changed my perspective on things. But then I started realizing, like, what am I going to do? You know what I mean? Straight after I finished school, I remember I was approached by you guys, and I was really, really excited. I was really happy. I'm like, Brandwagon, they're the best. Like,
thanks.
And then at the same time, the other guys had approached me.
And the other guys, yes. I remember those guys.
And I had really, really connected well with Jason and the other guys.
Yeah,
and I said,
crew.
I'm like, I already gave them a yes. I'm going to commit to them. And I decided to go for that. But after doing, I believe 1 year, 4 months, I worked with the other guys. I said, I don't think I'm cut out to work like a normal job. And I still remember I had left. And when I left, I'm like, you know what? I didn't even think about what I'm going to do. I just left, just like that. And then I still remember my first client. So I started graphic design.
So you started freelancing?
Freelancing straight away.
Oh, wow. That takes courage.
And it was so hard, Pete. Because I was like, I'm shy. I'm not very outgoing back then. And I still remember I actually started my journey of reading books. And this is really, for me, it was crazy because I was so in my own bubble that only after then did it pop. I felt like I went through a creative strut, and I said, I need to learn more to be more creative. And I got this book called Lateral Thinking. And after reading it, I'm like, what a good book. But I was so close-minded.
This is the Edward de Bono book?
One of my friends told me, did you know that it's a Maltese author? I'm like, no way. Then I started taking interest. I started reading more books. And as I left and I started doing freelance, I still remember I had one friend till today, he's a very good friend. He told me, Zach, I have this business card. He told me, can you change it for me? I told him, I cannot change just your business card. It has to be consistent with everyone. He told me, must you pitch it and I'll show it to the boss. I did so, and I built this really great relationship with Quicklets and Zanzi.
Oh, wow.
And that's where my freelance career kind of started.
All right, so you were the guy behind Quicklets and Zanzi. Fantastic.
In the
early days. Yeah,
I think it was 2017. And as it started progressing, then I got into another client who had called me. And this client till today, I want to mention names because this guy has really inspired me.
Yes, of course.
I used to do a lot of work for Mark Weingart through the other guys.
Mm-hmm.
And I still remember, I used to tell Jason, I'm like, wow, man, in Yala, I've never seen anything like it. I really wish one day to go there. I really, really wish. And I don't think I've ever said this on a podcast, but this story just really inspired me. And after about leaving for a few months, Mark calls me and he tells me, Zach, I need your help. I know that you're really good at creating presentations. Will you please help me? Straight away, I messaged Jason. I'm like, listen, I know that I'm not working for you anymore. He told me, don't worry, mate. He told me I sent him to you.
Brilliant.
So I was like, okay, good. And I got to meet Mark and I got to hear his story. And after hearing
it's quite a fascinating story.
Oh my God, I was so inspired. Like living that trauma, thinking that he's going to die at the age of 30 and then countering it by giving back. Mm-hmm. I've never met anyone who inspired me as much as him. And I said, I want to work with this person because I just wish to be like him. And then he told me, he's like, listen, what's it going to cost to do this presentation? And I told him it will cost X amount, but it's not for me. It's all for your charity. And in doing so, he was very kind. He told me, no, let me give you half. Let me help you out. I told him, no. I told him, I really, really look up to you. And we started a really good relationship. And I got to go to Nyala.
Wow, okay.
As a thank you. And he made my dream come true as well. I got to work closely with Mark, and he really inspired me. And even it got to a point where, after doing so much work for clients and taking care of these, I would say, clients that I built a relationship with, that I started questioning everything. I started saying, okay, this is great, but I don't want to become an agency. There are people over here clearly who can do a great job at that, but I don't want to do that. What is it that I want to do? And I really started thinking, I'm like, I really like cartoons. Like, I'm hearing this phrase by Estelle Mickey Mouse. I just still remember, I just started sketching at the side. And then I started noticing the shift in what I get paid for versus what I enjoy. And I started noticing, like, I really like drawing these characters. And they weren't fully formed back then.
Mm-hmm.
I started saying, like, if this makes me feel really good, can you imagine if I had to get paid doing this? I started saying, how can I do this? And just that mindset just started making me think of different opportunities. And it got to a point where, at the time, I was dating a very lovely person who gave me a great gift. She believed in me so much that she hired a gallery for 2 weeks.
She hired the gallery for you, okay.
She hired a gallery for 2 weeks and gave it to me as a birthday present.
Wow.
And she told me, this is your gift. She told me, it's your chance to do these characters as an exhibition. And I still remember, it was like 2 months away, and I gave it my all. I literally used digital art first, and then tangible art. So I created everything on the computer, fabricated it using technology like laser cutting. I just was playing, literally, and I created this exhibition.
Fantastic.
And from then, I really feel like it opened the door for me for other opportunities.
Wow. When was this, so?
This was 2018 in June.
That's amazing. Yeah, so what? That's like 6 years ago now.
6 years.
So when was it? When was the moment that you decided, okay, I've done a career in graphic design. I've understood how powerful it is, but I also know what I enjoy. So sharing a message, chasing your curiosity, working with your hands, and then focusing on where you feel your true self, designing these characters. So when was the moment you said, okay, this is it, I want to go full time and stick to the artist side?
I wouldn't say there was that one moment, but I still remember there were some small open doors that I was lucky that I paid attention to. Like the exhibition was one of them. It made me realize, there is a market for these things.
So you sold your art at that point in time?
I sold.
Wow.
I sold a few. I didn't sell out, but I sold a few.
And who were the type of people that were buying your art at that point in time?
So to be honest with you, I just invited friends, family. I invited everyone. I had no concept and idea of like, you need to get dealers and all these people. Obviously, the gallery was very nice enough to get their list, but it was overpacked. In fact, I still remember us running out of food, running out of wine.
Oh, wow.
So it was like we were in a tight situation.
It's a good problem to have.
Yeah, I guess so. But people described it as being a wedding reception. So many people came. But after that, I started getting people like saying, oh, wow, these would be amazing as T-shirts. These would be amazing as products. Then I started realizing, I'm like, it was originally started as an exhibition, but who knows, it could actually become a brand. And the characters weren't fully formed. Back then it was called Moth Has Got Some Character.
Okay.
Very amazing name, right? I mean, not the best, but I really started narrowing things down. Even the characters developed far more.
So where was Bepe then? So for those who don't know, Bepe is one of the main characters now in your story. So was Bepe created at that point in time in that first exhibition, or was it still a work in progress?
Bepe was created firstly. So first, I tried to create one character that represents all Maltese culture.
Okay.
And I still remember at that time I went to Sicily. And when I was in Sicily, I started paying more attention to the culture and the environments, like what is the visual culture and the visual language of Sicily.
Okay.
And that made me realize, like, they have this lady, I don't know what it's called, with the 3 legs, for example. They have all these colors. Then I started realizing, like, do we need to have one character, for example? Because before it was just a prickly pear, a Lutsuai, and he didn't even have a name.
Okay.
Then I'm like, it can be separated. I can create a character for different aspects. But Bepe became my favorite. Bepe was...
So who is Bepe?
Bepe is a curious... I would say Bepe represents me. He's extremely curious. And the way I looked at him is... I felt like I had this problem as an artist that I need to find a style. And to find a style shows that your identity. But then I started saying, like, I think I'm looking at this wrongly. Like, lots of artists have an identity, the way they paint, the colors they use. Like, why don't I reverse it? I studied graphic design. Identity can be a brand, can be a tick, can be a logo. I'm like, why don't I use a character? I'm curious. I don't want to commit to one thing for the rest of my life. I can use a character to explore style, material, narrative, sculptures, anything that I wish. And that's how Bepe was kind of formulated as a template.
Fantastic. Okay.
For me to explore different things.
Oh, interesting. Okay, so we're back in 2018. You've done your exhibition. People are reaching out to you, telling you, hey, you should do T-shirts, you should do, whatever, posters and the whole lot. Where did it go from there? And at what point in time did you start embracing the digital side and the NFT technologies? That was post-COVID, as far as I remember, right?
It was...
Or just in COVID, in 2020, as far as I know.
Literally during COVID time. When COVID time hit, it was, I would say it was a really special time for me because it really allowed me to get rid of distractions. Not that I suffer from FOMO or anything, but it made me realize, like, listen, no one's going out. Everyone's staying in. You're staying in too. What are you going to do? You're going to waste your time? You're going to watch movies? What are you going to do? And I said,
how many movies can you watch?
True. And then I realized, I'm like, okay, if I'm locked in, like, what am I going to work on? And I still remember about maybe a few weeks before, I was asking a few friends, I'm like, I see my heroes like Koz, Murakami, Jeff Koons, and I marvel at their art, how they manage to transform something that is a cartoon into something that is perceived differently, a large-scale sculpture. And I said, how can I do that? What would it take to do that? And I started asking people, and they told me there can be a tender, and you apply for it.
How to develop a monument.
Exactly.
It
went
was one of
straight
your
away.
dream. You wanted to create a monument, which was, modern design, modern culture, modern aesthetics, into, classic mold, or not so classic mold anymore.
Exactly.
A sign of the times, as opposed to okay. And so you started calling out and just started looking at, so how does this happen? How do I create a monument? How do I establish myself?
Exactly. So I started collecting information, asking people that I trust in my circle, And they started telling me, like, a tender comes out from the government, you try and apply. And I did so. A friend of mine told me, like, listen, try this one out. There was the Marsa Junction.
Yes.
There was a call out.
Yeah, I remember that call.
And I was like, okay, let me try it out. Let me give it a shot. And in doing so, I collected all this information. I came up with an idea. I spoke to, luckily, because of the past relationships with Mark Weingard, I had connections to his architects, for example, the house, for example. And, and I just started collecting information. They were very nice to help me. And I created this kind of like little branded booklet. I presented it to Infrastructure Malta.
Okay.
And I got no feedback at all.
Nothing.
Zero.
Great.
And back then, I still remember, I'm like, I would love some feedback so I can learn and iterate and, change things up. And I called them and I told them, like, listen, I told them, you announce the winners. You mind if you just, like, tell me, like, what was wrong? And they told me, listen, Zach, you use a cartoon character. It looks like a joke. And they're like, I don't know if the public will take this seriously. I'm like, okay, thank you.
How did you feel when you got that feedback?
I mean...
What was the first initial reaction?
The first initial reaction was like, maybe I went to the wrong person. I said, maybe they don't see the value. And it's fine, Not everyone values things the same.
Of course.
And I had some friends close in my group.
That's a very mature response, but what was the first response? Was it anger or was it frustration?
To be honest, I was a bit angry as well.
I can imagine.
Everything out of pocket.
After giving everything that you had to put that, of course.
It took time as well.
Yeah.
I mean, and then I looked at things differently. I said, like, look how much I learned looking back. I spoke to these people. I understand how this industry works. I know what it costs to make one. I know like anything that has to do with creating a sculpture, I know how long it takes. I know what resources Malta has. Then I went back and I said, okay, I have this booklet. It's not a waste of my time. It's an asset. I can go and propose it to someone else. And I was very, very lucky where basically I had an opportunity where I said, these sculptures are contemporary. The sculpture in particular, Bepe. Zaha Hadid is building a very contemporary building, the first of its kind in Malta, that sits in an island surrounded by heritage and culture. I think there's a gap over there that can be filled. Something that is so new has a loss of its Maltese identity. So I said, maybe I can propose this, which is a twist to Malta's past, but in a contemporary kind of direction.
To echo Zaha Hadid's twist in the architecture. Brilliant.
And I got in touch. And funny enough, they said, oh my God, count your lucky stars, because we're actually interested in finding someone to do sculptures.
Wow.
And back then, they mentioned that they were going to bring Koz. And I had a mini heart attack. I'm like, Koz is my favorite artist. Like, so I was like, let me try my best. I said, can I have some renders? I did my magic, started sketching them, had a meeting, and it got approved. And it didn't get approved for one. It was approved for 5 sculptures.
Wow.
1 for each character.
And you already had the designs for those other 4?
Yes.
Oh, fantastic.
In the process, I said, what would be... So this is something I learned when coming up with presentations and pitching. I think about what I would love to see. But then I also think about what value I can bring. So it has to be a win-win.
Of course.
There has to be common ground. And I said, just one character, Bepe, although he stands for the landscape, it might not be enough. There needs to be the brave knight. There needs to be the goddess of fertility. You're understanding me? The Lutsu. So it adds more value.
And you really managed to capture those iconic pieces which, are there. Iconic sort of, artifacts of Maltese culture and subculture, and join them up into something which has this extremely modern twist. I've been really intrigued over the past couple of days. So researching, to get to this point where we had this podcast, I try and do a lot of my own background research. And as I told you, I didn't call you specifically because I wanted also to funnel my curiosity into this conversation, to keep asking you those questions. One statement which I came across, which really inspired me, and you're a very inspiring person. You said this in a podcast that you recorded last year with Metaverse Architects with Luca Arrigo. I believe in progress more than outcomes. I don't know if you planned that as a quote, but I think it's a really strong quote. Maybe there's a t-shirt happening over there. You really follow this iterative process. You really follow your heart and your curiosity, and you keep talking about this curiosity. And there's a lot of storytelling in that curiosity, but by unraveling, by asking more questions and going in deeper, I think is what gets you to create such amazing pieces of art.
Thank you.
It must be painful as well, though, because obviously, with every door that opens, there's probably another 10 that have been closed in your face as well.
And how?
And I also heard within that podcast that you had started this project now of doing 365 different illustrations,
Yes.
which were then minted as NFTs, right?
Yes.
Talk to us a bit about that process.
Sure.
And for the layman, and including myself, let's talk a bit about NFTs and their value, and obviously the meteoric rise of NFTs. There is a current fall in terms of the value, but you still believe that is the future. And I believe there's a huge use case for NFTs. So we're all on the same page over there. I just believe like every new technology goes up and then it comes down before it peaks again. So talk to us about the 365 illustrations.
When I got into NFTs, it was purely out of a friend. I feel like I'm very blessed. I have a very small circle of friends who, when they give me advice, they really give me advice because they care about me and they want to help me out. And a friend of mine had suggested, it's like, try these NFTs out. I'm like, bro, I don't know anything about this industry. He's like, try it. I still remember, literally just to mint an NFT, which basically means, so for those who don't know what NFTs are, it is basically a digital artwork that is backed by the blockchain. And it's almost like a certificate of approval that you created this artwork.
Okay.
So in easy language, you can prove that you own something digital. And people will say, but where's the value in that? There's a lot of value in that, and I'll explain why. I mean, if you had to buy something like a Picasso, how are you going to enjoy it? I'm going to hang it on my wall. Yes, you stay looking at your wall 24 hours. Where do you spend most of your time? On your phone or looking at the wall? You spend it on your phone.
Yeah.
What is the value of something that you own digitally? How much do people care about a blue tick or a verification or an avatar that shows how much, I don't know, prestige they have and all this? So digital certification is important for social status and proving that you own certain things.
And I think in the art space, I think it's brought a lot more value as well, because obviously the concept of there's no more royalties in Picasso's work. Once you buy the art, it's yours. Whilst once you create a piece of digital art, you can create a smart contract which allows you to also benefit from the sale of those NFTs, right?
Completely, yes. The reason I didn't mention that first is because of marketing, things have changed a lot. But yes, that was the initial selling point that, for example, that drew me in. Like you're telling me, if I create a digital artwork, I am creating essentially an asset. So why would I not show up and do my best work if I know that this could be sold and resold and resold and resold?
Of course.
However, things have changed a lot over the years. And this is probably why one of the crashes happened as well. Marketplaces, to stand out, have neglected royalties. And the reason why they did so is a platform came out called Blur, which completely disrupted the whole market, where they gave collectors and buyers the option to sell artworks without paying the royalties to the artist. So that means they're buying things with a plus 10% to 5% profit, which kind of ruined the whole industry. So, yes, but going back to it,
So
I got into NFTs. I remember telling my friend, I'm like, it's going to cost me 60 euros like to upload a picture. I'm like, it makes more sense for me to do it as a canvas, you know?
Yeah, and sell it for more.
Exactly. And he told me, just try it, Zach. I tried it, nothing. 8 months, nothing. No one bought anything. Then I realized, I'm like, it's all about marketing, like all things. Don't think just because there's a market for something, you're just going to sell it. You need to market yourself. And I got into it very, very luckily. As I mentioned, I didn't feel like I had the style. So I took Bepe and I said, every single day, I'm going to draw this character, Bepe, in the style of different artists I admire. One, for me to actually learn how to draw their style. And second of all, I want to give appreciation because they inspire me. And in doing so, I can't even believe it. I connected with people who I admire. We became friends. We've even met.
Wow.
And I kept on doing this. And I did one whole year doing this. A drawing a day. Literally. Probably.
I mean, think about those, what we call in music, the 10,000 hours, of really harnessing your craft.
And how. And then I realized.
And finding yourself and finding your style.
That's exactly what I wanted to say. In doing so, I realized this. I don't know who says this, but in order to be, you must do. And I realized, because I drew so much, I realized, wow, I like this, I like that. I learned so much. I realized sometimes we live in two separate worlds, how we think and what we actually do.
Mm-hmm.
And the only way for them to be aligned is to like literally get them in sync as fast as possible. Like what I'm thinking, let me try it out. I was wrong. I was right. Iterate. You know what I mean? I keep on doing that.
Let me stop you there, because I think this is a really interesting fact that we should talk about. I find that a lot of, and I don't want to start sounding old, but probably I am anyway, that there's a generational issue in terms of people willing to fail. And people really trying to keep on going and keep on trying to harness and keep testing themselves and getting out to fail. Do you find that we've become more of a voir culture as opposed to actually a do culture? Is there a concern that we're losing our craft? Are we losing skill sets?
I mean, technology is definitely helping us. I can't really speak for other people, but it can be that we become maybe a bit too lazy with certain things.
Or are the younger generation giving up too early because they feel like everything's already been done and everything's already been invented? Do you see that there's less? Because then the conflict with that and the contrast is then from a content creation perspective, I think that there's a higher amount of content creators, but using a lot of redone tools. Mm-hmm. So using templates as opposed to creating original pieces. How does that sit with you?
I mean, me as a person who likes to create everything myself, I mean, at least I didn't like it, I want to be honest with you. But now I realize that, like, listen, sometimes your time is really valuable. And if something is just, if there's an idea that you need to test and you need to test it quickly, just test it. Don't try and get things perfect, because sometimes perfection, that's actually what I learned. Perfection ruins everything. Before, I used to be scared to post something.
Yeah.
Because I used to feel like, as an artist, you're giving your heart out.
Yourself.
Exactly. And if you don't get a response, like, you're talking to a wall. But then I realized, like, no one cares, you know what I mean? And no one's going to judge the art. No one's going to judge the artist by the art, by one artwork. You're understanding me? So it's a lot of artworks adds to the body of work.
Of course. So it's the consistency. Consistency, the discipline, putting yourself out there and playing hardball. Within
1 year of showing up, I can't even explain what it did for me. Like, in the sense that it exposed me to a lot of opportunities. I became friends with a lot of people who I admire. It made me build such self-confidence, saying, like, holy crap, like, I did this, you know? Like, it started off just, even thinking about it, I'm like, I had no idea I just wanted to progress and to grow. And I was just curious. I didn't intend to do this for money or anything like that. And it just opened a lot of doors. Anyway, so after doing all these drawings, towards the end, I ran out of people who I admire. And I remember getting onto Twitter, which Twitter is the best place to be on if you're doing NFTs. X now, sorry. And I started drawing these artists. And in doing so, one of them just told me, hey man, like, you want to mint this artwork? I love it. I was like, amazing, yes. And we did so, and it sold. And then we did another one, and it sold. We did another one, it sold. I'm like, Ilalu, like, who would have, like, I would have known, like, you know what I mean? You try something.
How did that feel at that point in time, that you're seeing your artworks really starting to properly sell?
Pete, I'm not going to lie. The first time I minted my artwork, for the first 8 months, I'm not joking, I would always go to bed and saying, Ilalu, I'm going to wake up in the morning and I'm going to get a sale. It never happened. But then I realized with collaboration, just collaborating with people, that's how things happen. You add value to someone adds value to you, and you build a bigger pie. And I kept on doing this, and then got to a point where I said, a year passed. I created this body of work. I made all these cool friends. I'm like, why don't I do 1 year of providing value with one different artwork every day on the blockchain?
Wow.
And I didn't manage to complete it all, but I got to 315 days out of 365.
I mean, that's incredible. 315 days of 365 is pretty much incredible. If you consider all the amount of days where maybe you feel unwell, other stuff that's happening, things that you have on your big list of to-dos. I have so many questions for that, but I want to start with one. Did you ever feel that imposter syndrome? Did you ever feel that they're going to catch me out? Am I a real artist? Is this who I am?
I think I have that till today.
Why?
I don't know what it is.
I mean, you've clearly succeeded. You have the amount of work that you've created, and the quality of your work is impressive.
Thank you.
You have people, not only the first friends and family group who started buying your artwork just because they wanted to be kind to you. You have a lot of people who are obviously queuing up, and you even have your own branded store now where you're selling your stuff. So you clearly have made it. Do you think that there is that kind of... Are you trying to protect yourself in the sense that you want to remain humble so that you can continue being hungry? Or are you still feeling, am I actually good at what I'm doing?
I feel like I don't know how to explain it, but I feel like I will never stop learning. There's still a lot that I don't know. One thing that I know is I know nothing. And it's true, because I don't know anything. Like, I see that even with the store. I had no idea how to create products, but I learned, you know what I mean? Same with the monument. Sometimes I have to remind myself, like, listen, Zach, you created a monument, you created products, you know, like, you can do this, you know?
I think you're the only person I know who's created a monument, so...
Thank you.
Wow.
No, but it's true. I think it's just like a process of understanding how things... It's curiosity to understand how things work.
It's always coming back to the curiosity.
And even sometimes thinking about how you can make things work even better than they actually they take to do. I'll give you an example, like the monument. I went first year locally, and they told me, like, listen, to do one, it will take 1 year. I'm like, wow, that's 5 years. So then I started thinking, I'm like, why do we have to use the classical method? Why don't we use technology? Why don't we use milling, for example? And then they cut them into sections and create casts. And we shortened that down, 5 sculptures in 100 days.
Wow.
So, you know, if you're just curious and you question things...
And challenging the way things have always been done to try and find your own route.
Exactly. You understand this very well. Part of your values.
Yeah. You remember that?
Of course.
Challenge everything is definitely one of the most important brand values, I think. And it comes from that, you know, concept of being curious now, of always chasing a better way, of finding a better way to do stuff. You mentioned to me before that obviously, again, it's not just about creating the art, it's about marketing the art, it's about also building a storefront, and actually today a physical store. 315 days out of 365 is extremely successful in most books. Having said that, there was that feeling that you were taking on way too much.
Yes.
How did you deal with that? And what is the lesson that you learned that you can share with our audience?
So a reason why I did manage to finish the 365 is within that year, too much happened for me. I got the opportunity to open the shop, of which I had to create 400. I created 400 products. Okay. At the same time, I was waking up at 5 o'clock in the morning, and just to let you know, I am a man of habit. I love habit. So I say, like, who is the person I want to become, and what does that person do on an everyday basis? Because that is the easiest way to get there.
Yeah.
But you compound it slowly. So I started saying, like, I can't keep on going. I was waking up at 5, doing an hour, doing my drawing, doing it as an NFT. Then I got asked to travel the world to speak about what I'm doing. I couldn't keep up with everything. Designing the products, doing the Cacti Crew, and then traveling. It just took one big toll on me. Like, I was even doing jiu-jitsu as well. Like, I had to stop that, because if I just get injured, you know what I mean? I'll have to put all my life on pause. Then it got to a point where I just spent, I think, like 6 months exhausted. No enthusiasm, burnt out.
Classic signs of burnout, eh?
And I was saying, like, why do I have this? Like, I can't understand it. I'm like, why am I not motivated? What's wrong with me? And then I realized, I need to catch up on sleep. I wasn't sleeping enough. I wasn't exercising enough. And then I realized, like, holy crap, like, even recently I met Mark Weingard in Dubai. Mm-hmm. He told me, Zach, I give you the best tip of advice. So when you hit the age of 40, you start realizing how you should have cared for your health. I was like, wow, I experienced a burnout, and I think I know exactly what he means.
But you're not yet 40, are you?
No, I'm not 40.
You're nowhere near 40, no?
No, I'm 32.
Oh, wow. Getting closer. 8 years to go.
So it really, really took a toll on me. Mm-hmm. But it took time to get out of it.
Yeah, I can imagine. So if I had to ask you, what's your advice to curious artists or curious individuals? Because you can apply this to anything. You can apply this to entrepreneurship. You can apply this to any brand builder. What's your advice to avoid getting into this situation? Or do you really think that it's actually part of the journey?
I believe that people can give you advice, but unless you actually live it and you experience it, it's a very different experience.
Mm-hmm.
And the advice I would give is whatever you think, try it on a smaller scale. At least, even me looking back, I used to always think big ideas and then spend a lot of time creating it. And then if it goes wrong, you know what I mean? You have to either resort to plan B. But I think the best advice is to try something out on a smaller scale. And then you can perfect it over time.
I think that's an interesting philosophy. And I think, it's definitely the most mature way of doing it. But now you're starting to sound as if you are approaching 40. So I think that, to be honest, I think one of the most amazing, strengths of youth is the ignorance of youth, is to actually believe that you need to think big and you need to think high and you need to keep going further and always pushing the boundaries. So I believe if you have that, once you've built up the scars, you realize that you probably would have done it differently. If I look back today and say, knowing everything I know, knowing all the hardships I've been through, would I have done the same thing today? I would have probably said, oh my God, I would have been shit scared. The reality is I've enjoyed every single step of the way, including all the burnouts and including all the stresses. So I think there's something about that, balance of aiming really big, but also being very conscious of who you are. And I think the feedback is probably like try and look out for the signs of burnout a little bit earlier than when it's too late.
Of course. Like even balance, as much as I keep on saying it, I feel like it doesn't exist, but there needs to be a certain level of balance,
Yeah.
Knowing when to stop. Even recently I read a book, changed the way I think about certain things. It's called Essentialism. Like spending the right amount of time doing the most essential things you can do within your time. It's like being very significant and effective with your time. Like even in fact, as I mentioned, I really believe in habits. So every single day, like I have this paper, like time boxing, and I write down everything, what I need to do, my brain dump, the 3 most important things. I schedule it. I have my habits as well, a section, and what I need to delegate as well. Do this every single day. Document it. Even I love journaling.
Oh,
I love looking back the year before and just seeing what I did on this day last year.
How clever.
Just quite interesting to see like some similarities. Like, for example, me saying like, I really wish, for example, I went to this country and 1 year later I'll actually be in the country. I wouldn't even have believed it.
So it's about, planning, dreaming, manifesting and actually doing.
But even sometimes things they happen in such coincidence that it's incredible.
Like meeting Gary Vee, no?
Like I met him twice, and the
You met him twice?
The second time I couldn't even believe it.
You're a big fan of Gary Vee?
Big fan. Before he got into NFTs. Way before that. The second time I met him, I couldn't even believe it. I was... So funny enough, the first time I ever traveled alone was to go to America.
Okay.
And it was amazing. The second time I went to America, I still remember I was queuing in Frankfurt, and as I'm queuing, I just see this guy behind me, like short with a beanie and doing this number 5. I'm like, no, don't tell me. Don't tell me. I turn around and it's Gary Vaynerchuk, and he's literally right behind me.
Wow.
I turn the other way. I'm like, this is a long queue. I'm like, I have like at least 15 minutes to speak to him.
Brilliant.
And I just started speaking to him. I'm like, hey man, I'm from Malta. Have you ever heard of Malta? He's like, yes. I'm supposed to be speaking in Malta for Sigma.
Wow.
Turns out he didn't end up speaking because it was his birthday for the event. So he spoke on the next one in Dubai.
All right.
But we had a good chat. At that time, I felt like, I don't know, it was so weird. Like I gave him my hat of Charge and Run. He didn't want it. I gave him postcards. He didn't want anything. It was I just felt like giving him because he gave me so much. I've read all his books. And
yeah, that's interesting.
it was just a really nice experience speaking to him.
Because he's definitely affected the way you think and the way you attack work.
He speaks about marketing very differently.
Yeah.
He speaks about giving. And then, if you need, ask. Which is a very nice approach, you know what I mean? Give value. But don't give for the ask.
Yeah.
But give value. It could be in advice. It could be in connecting people. I really like his approach.
And the reality is it's when we give the most that we actually get. You just mentioned the Charles and Ron collaboration, and you've done other collaborations. You've collaborated, I think, with Red Bull, right? And you've collaborated with or somebody else. I know I wrote that
was
down
quite
here.
some time ago.
Talk to me about the Charles and Ron collaboration, because that is, in my opinion, 2 Maltese brands, you and Charles and Ron, with such a significant power, but also such a significant ambassadorship of what Malta really stands for.
That's another thing I forgot to mention. During the burnout, there was Charles and Ron happening as well at the same time. So that was another thing added to the list.
Just the biggest collab of your life at this point.
I'm telling you, Pete, too much going on at one go.
How that happened?
Basically, what happened was, originally I had met them through this partner I was dating at the same time, same one as the exhibition, and she had introduced me. And at the time, I looked up to them. I was saying, like,
of course,
you know what I mean? They are leaders. They take something that we take for granted, and they turn it sexy. They make it look really nice and contemporary and new. And that really inspired me, and I love the colors that they use.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I still remember while I was doing research for the products, I said, wow, I'm learning so much. I'm looking at Louis Vuitton and seeing what they're doing with characters and all this. I'm like, I think I have an idea for them to add value. And I just went and I showed them some ideas. Then they got back to me and they told me, listen, we're having our 25th anniversary? No. I forgot what year it was. But
big anniversary.
Their big anniversary. And they wanted to commemorate their love. And I was like, wow, like this is perfect. And we came up with the idea that Bepe is the messenger boy between Charles and Ron. Ron lived in Holland, and they used to show their love and affection for each other through these letters. And we created a whole collection as Bepe being the messenger boy, and Malta connecting them back together through Bepe.
Fantastic.
And we created all these collabs, all these collections, these bags.
How did the collection do?
It went well. It was super, super nice. Even seeing Bepe on a bag, it was like, wow.
A dream come true, for sure.
And how. And they really know. One, I was inspired by the love that people have for them. I've never seen anyone who are die hardcore fans for them. Super, super nice.
Well, I mean, they deserve it. I think they've worked so hard they've worked so hard for fashion, but they've also worked so hard for the Maltese, for Malta in general.
And even they throw great events too.
Yeah.
It was at their coffee shop. It was lovely.
Fantastic. We need to probably get them on the show as well at one point.
I can speak to Ron for you and Charles.
Brilliant. I'm sure they'd have a good bunch of stories to share with us. So coming back to Zack, we're heading towards the end, but you're definitely nowhere close to the middle or the highlight of your career. I believe that there's so much ahead of you. I think you're definitely going to be living way over the 100, especially if you keep to your habits. So effectively, you're 30% in. What's coming up next?
Right now, I'm really interested in building again in Web3. I'm really interested in taking digital and physical to another level, in a sense that maybe even possibly onboarding more people into Web3, like NFTs, through products. So you can show that you own a product with an NFC tag, for example. I want to try and blur the lines between the two of them. I wish to build in two areas. One is commerce, products, and at the same time, art. Crazy things, big things that can inspire, marrying digital and physical. And then, on the cheaper and more affordable scale size, commercial products.
How do you believe humans are going to be experiencing the Web3?
I really, really believe within the next 5 to 10 years, we will be way more immersed in digital than ever before. And the reason being is, look at us maybe 5-10 years ago before. Look at us now. How much we use our phone, how much we depend on them. Why should we be restricted to a rectangle?
You've said that before.
Because it just makes sense. Why can't we be restricted to glasses, for example, lenses? I really believe it's heading there.
Well, I mean, with the latest Apple innovation, I think there seems to be an interesting route going down. I don't believe technology is there yet, and obviously there are some big barriers. But I think it's interesting to see, where we're going there. I'm obviously a big fan of the physical and nature, and I think everything you're saying, whilst I get from an anthropological perspective and from a digital perspective, I'm curious to see how that's going to take us there. And also curious to see how innovators, creatives, will be able to put people like me at ease into that world. So I think it's interesting that you're going to be chasing that.
In simple terms, I think software is there. The intelligence is there. The hardware is not there yet.
It's a hardware issue, you think?
It's a hardware issue, 100%.
What about a culture issue? What is it? You think that kids will easily quickly jump into that space?
I think you'll find there are the people who are the early adopters, and then there's the laggards.
Yeah.
So the ones who get in early always get rewarded, and they always speak about it like crazy. You need to be here.
The ones that get in there first go broke. The ones that get in there early.
And then it just depends. If they have the networking effects, that works really well. Like the more people that are inside it, the better it gets.
Of
But
course.
I really, really do think it's heading there.
So what space are you going to play in that area then?
I want to be fully immersed in it.
Okay.
Fully immersed. I'm looking into it right now, like creating art that is 3D, that can be geotagged. So, for example, I imagine even Google Maps, for example. Why do I need to have sculptures? It's a waste of time, waste of resources. Why can't I have interactive experiences that are pinned in a geographic location?
Which you can experience through your lenses.
Right now, is it valuable? No. But if there's the hardware, for sure.
Ray-Bans Meta glasses. Have you bought a pair yet?
No, not yet.
I can't wait to buy a pair, to be honest.
I'm considering it.
Yeah, they're not available yet in Europe. I think it's a licensing issue that we're seeing at this point.
There was something quite similar. Snapchat had done the glasses too.
Yeah?
Ages ago. They had done a really cool vending machine, really good marketing.
Ah, interesting.
But it was literally just for photos.
Maybe we need to start selling them in your store.
That would be super cool.
For sure. Zach, final question. Soundtrack of your life. What's the song?
Soundtrack of my life. I don't know, but a song that I always find myself hearing all the time is, I used to really love and still do like rap and hip hop. So I'm going to say Change by J. Cole.
Nice. Interesting choice. Fantastic. Zach, it's been a true honor and a pleasure to have you on this podcast. You've been extremely generous with your time, with your thoughts, and I think there's a lot of people going to learn a lot from this. I'm inspired by what you said, but also excited about what your future is going to hold. So,
Thank you, Pete. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being part of the Unbrandme crew.
Cheers, man. Thank you.